10 years ago, The Dark Knight was released to widespread critical acclaim and considered now one of the greatest superhero films of all time, and to others, one of the greatest films of all time. And I'm gonna look at it now, 10 years after, and see, does it hold up? The answer is yes. The Dark Knight takes all the elements that were set up in Batman Begins and elevates them to a whole new level. What Christopher Nolan did for this film was something like The Empire Strikes Back is to the original Star Wars. He took the narrative and expanded it farther than you could ever dream of, and he succeeded in his attempt. The Dark Knight is not only a better film in general, but its themes, its dialogue, its editing, its storytelling are far superior to that of Batman Begins. Not to say Batman Begins is inferior, but compared to each other, they're basically night and day. Gone are the more fantastical elements of Batman Begins. Though Batman Begins was a grittier remake of the Batman mythos, it was definitely more fantastical in its execution. We had fear gas, we had weird imagery, stuff like that. But here, Nolan goes for a more realistic approach that feels more, people say, like a cop drama. I'm gonna say it's more like a David Fincher film. This film is heavily inspired by David Fincher, I believe, and that's not a problem with me because I love David Fincher. And altogether, all this stuff just really works. So I think it's best to start off with what everybody talked about when they saw The Dark Knight, the Joker. Heath Ledger's performance of the Joker is just mesmerizing to watch. It's unlike anything I've seen before on screen, and that's quite an accomplishment. Heath Ledger embodies this role unlike anyone else, and if anybody was in his position, I don't know if we would have gotten the performance we got out of him. This Joker is sinister, calculating, and really disturbing, and not so much like a villain from a superhero film. He feels like a real, true anarchist. The only difference is he's wearing makeup. And now, a lot of people will say that he is the best Joker, and I'm going to say no. He's not the best Joker. The best Joker is Mark Hamill's Joker from the Batman the Animated Series, and he is the Joker. But what Heath Ledger does here in this role is perfection. He is perfect for this portrayal of the Joker. This Joker is not your typical Joker, and I love that. I love that Christopher Nolan was willing to do something different that we hadn't seen before, and that's what makes this movie so fresh. This film, as a superhero film, is something that we've never seen in one of these films before. It almost changes its genre. It's no longer a superhero film, it is a crime thriller. Now, with that out of the way, I'm going to talk about some of the stuff that people talk about, but don't talk about as much. I realize when people look back at The Dark Knight, they often look at the Joker and just how good of a movie this is, but I don't think they really go into explaining how this is a good movie. And first off, I'm going to talk about Aaron Eckhart as Harvey Dent or Two-Face. This is the best performance I've ever seen out of him. And a lot of people don't go out of this movie saying, oh yeah, Aaron Eckhart was so good. But his performance is amazing. The way this character is written, how he's supposed to be this shining beacon of hope and also just have this dark side to him, really plays on the ideas of duality, and this guy's so likable too. This is definitely Aaron Eckhart's best performance. I mean, I haven't seen him in anything like this ever again. He's a good actor, but he's never had such a meaty role as he's had here. He's absolutely fantastic, and when he gets dark, he gets dark. and you can honestly sympathize with him. He's a villain you can be remorseful towards. He's not inherently a bad guy, but he's gone down a dark path, and I absolutely love it. Also, let me talk about the story of this film because I don't think it gets enough credit. Rewatching this film after maybe about 4 years of not even seeing it, this film is just the perfect thriller. The movie almost works as a spider web of different things being connected to other things here and there, and they all connect to a center point. And everything just kind of flows together so nicely and so smoothly. The editing in this film is fantastic. And what I really like about this film is the issues it brings up about justice and what's right and what's wrong and how good people can become bad. And it's just these little things that you wouldn't think of, but they really mean a lot. Nolan has created something that is just timeless, in my opinion. A lot of these ideas are relevant today and were relevant 10 years ago. Also, going back to this film, the cinematography is some of the best cinematography I've ever seen from a film. There's other films that have better cinematography, but his cinematography is so concise and so smooth. Every shot in this film is absolutely gorgeous to look at. And when you get to those big IMAX shots, you're just in awe. And this is where I'm going to go a little bit into my negatives with the film. Because, though this is a really good film, it does have some problems with it. First off, I'm going to talk a little bit about the cinematography, and especially the IMAX. I love IMAX. I love seeing a big picture on screen. However, Christopher Nolan, in a lot of his movies, uses IMAX a lot, but he doesn't use it all the time. And when that happens, you get entire sequences where you're constantly fighting against different aspect ratios, and your eye pays attention to this, and it gets really distracting during a lot of these scenes when you're constantly seeing the film go from big to small with, letterboxing. It's just a really awkward nitpick that I have. But also, I have a problem with the movie has some pacing issues. It is 2.5 hours long, and I think some stuff could have been cut down a little bit. There's this part in the film with this investor who invests in the mob, Lau. He's from Hong Kong, and there's this moment in the film where Batman goes to Hong Kong to find him, and it just feels like something that's more like a detour, that you don't really need this in the film, and it adds about 10 minutes to the film. So I think it's something that could have easily been cut, although the Lau storyline does connect back in. There's just that one part that I think could be cut out to shorten the runtime, and I think the film would be better for it. But honestly, that's all I have for my nitpicks. So let's go back into scenes I like. I love the middle part of this film. The midpoint is so tense, with so much emotion and just so many twists happening at once, that the midpoint of this film, which is the part where Rachel Dawes dies and Joker escapes prison, is one of the best midpoints I've ever seen put on film. Everything is just so well executed during this scene. It's so tense and so raw and gets your blood pumping. This is a great part of the film. As well as something I really like is the boat scene. There's this part in the film where we have pedestrians on a boat and some inmates on a boat. And they both have these detonators that will, if they press them, will blow up the other boat. And everybody starts debating on what they should do. And it really shows the humanity of people and what they're willing to do. Because many of the people on the pedestrian boat think they should blow up the other boat that has the inmates on them because they've made their choice. However, it's great to see the inmates be against all this and throw the detonator away, because it's in that moment they realize what they are. They are criminals. It's just such a good scene that I don't think gets talked about enough. Also, I love the ending. I love how downplayed it is. You don't have this bombastic final fight. You do sort of with the Joker. The Joker is the climax of the film, but the stuff with Harvey Dent, Two-Face, is the emotional climax, and this is what ends our film, and I think it's perfect and so downplayed that I don't think it gets enough recognition. Guys, after 4 years of not seeing The Dark Knight, I can say that this is one of the best films I've ever seen, and it's one of the best superhero films. It still has its problems with pacing, and that's okay though, because some people can look past that. Many studios have tried to recreate what The Dark Knight did. They tried doing it with The Amazing Spider-Man. Zack Snyder tried doing it with his Snyderverse, and it just doesn't work. The Dark Knight seems to be this thing that was just lightning in a bottle that worked once and maybe can never work again. Everything tries to be like The Dark Knight and be darker and grittier. But this film, after rewatching it, it's not as gritty and dark as people say it is. This movie is very light and fun. It does have its heavy issues and darker themes, but it's still a fun movie that doesn't take itself completely seriously. There's still fun being had. Characters joke, but there's never a part in the film where Batman is just being like a depressing asshole. There's nothing like that. And I think that's the problem with a lot of these darker themed movies that are coming out, trying to say they're like The Dark Knight. They're not like The Dark Knight because The Dark Knight didn't do that. Overall, guys, The Dark Knight is a fantastic film and well deserving of being considered one of the greatest superhero films of all time. And with that said, I give The Dark Knight a 9 out of 10. Guys, if you haven't seen The Dark Knight, do yourself a favor and watch it. Or if you've seen it before, just rewatch it over and over because it's really, really good. So anyway, guys, with all that said, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next review.